It's very easy to make a lot of mistakes in Civilization 7, so as you set off, take just a moment here and learn from some of mine. Here are some of the things I wish I knew before playing Civilization 7. My first misdemeanor is using commanders incorrectly. I believe that the ambush, the rampaging healing ambush, is the way to go. However, there are of course other viable strategies. Maybe a more peaceful one where you go down this leadership path, stationing your commanders, particularly in unhappy settlements. However, it is, I firmly believe, the assault initiative promotion in particular that allows us to really take advantage of what commanders do best. So, once you have that promotion, march into enemy territory with the commander fully laden with units ready to deploy. Then, click the deploy button, spam them out all over the place. Thanks to our assault promotion, that initiative promotion may be comboed with others, like Bulwark, for example, or something that extends your command radius. It's time to pillage. Not only will you destroy their units, destroy their ability to generate yield, and take some of your own, but crucially, you'll also be able to heal your units. This lets you go on potentially a never-ending rampage. And the commander has a Scorched Earth ability as well, so you can get everyone within your radius to do the same. My second tip is actually a little bit of a learning, and something I definitely didn't do in Civilization 6, and that's use scouts. Absolutely always take it as your freebie, I believe, in almost every situation. Not just for the search mechanic, which by the way is fantastic early on at finding locations for cities, as well as discoveries in the fog, but also you can station them using the handily available next door lookout mechanic too. Using them like watchtowers, scouts are better than they've ever been. Third up, it's time to talk about the merchant. I've had a lot of questions about this guy, not just because his UI is terrible. Unlocked through the civics tree and annoyingly again and again every age. Once you build one, or create one, you then are basically given a list of cities that are potentially within range that you could trade with. If they're green, they're within your range, and you can extend your range as you move through the ages and pick up new civics, technologies, etc. But then you actually have to send the merchant to the city to build the trade route. You can't just establish it from your home. The merchant must physically wander over, and then you'll be able to establish the route. If the city is in red, it's out of range. Or maybe you need a diplomatic deal to be able to trade with that civilization more. Regardless, once you've sent your merchant there and established the trade route, you'll receive the resources. They'll get a little bit of cash, but don't worry, it'll cost you nothing ongoing. By the way, if you're wondering, a mistake that I made was getting something like horses here and thinking, wait, where are they? I can't even assign them to a city. Oh, they're an empire-wide resource, giving a very different effect this time around. The final learning about the merchant, another hidden ability, if you will, hidden behind, of course, the UI, is the fact that you don't just use this guy to make trade routes, but you can also use it to build a road. In fact, it's the only way to build a road in Civilization 7, because workers, builders, of course, aren't here. So, simply click on the city, and bam, the road is built. It must be a friendly city, or settlement, I should say, city or town. Do take care, however, because you have no control over it, you can end up with some really funky-looking road situations. And you'll need to build your bridges separately too. These roads and bridges will function just like roads to enemy cities. You'll be able to move your units along them quicker, and of course the trade will physically take place along them. However, they won't quite work the same way as roads do with towns. Let's talk about towns now then, connecting and specializing. By default, every new settler will produce a settlement that is a town, not a city. Towns are a little bit different to cities. They will automatically, as you can see, establish a road connection, I believe if they're within 10 tiles to the nearest city. And they're great for grabbing tiles quickly, especially for grabbing resources. However, they do not have their own production queue. By default, they'll focus on growing their own population, and you can only really purchase buildings that do not have specialists. Often these will be some of the more basic buildings, like warehouse buildings that are ageless. The balance here is important. One town per one city might be a good idea. At first I thought, let's just make them all grow. But no. Towns actually serve a very important role, not just in growing population. More population is not always the best thing. So as you build more towns around your cities, maybe connecting 1 or 2 like I have here, it's time then to actually see what they're doing. Once you specialize them, once you give them a focus, after reaching 7 citizens or more, you'll then be able to feed food to nearby cities. Clicking into the detail to see here, for example, that this capital city is receiving food from 2 nearby towns. And that makes up actually half of the food that my capital city is receiving. These towns are not to be messed with once they have a focus. And it's important to do that as well to boost their own yield. And better yet, add some culture policies or maybe technology into the mix and you can really surge that food production. Regardless of how you grow, a couple of other quick tips at the end of this section. Firstly, don't forget, if you build an improvement, whether you buy it or not, you will then build an urban tile. Build one over a rural tile and you'll get a free expand effectively, like I just did there. Adding a building to a town will add a population to it as well. So if you want to reach that 7 mark to specialize earlier on to feed food to a nearby city, then you can do that. And of course, over time, upgrade some towns into cities themselves so that you can add specialists to tiles and get access to the full suite of buildings. And of course, those buildings produce yield. And one of the yields, the new yield in fact, is influence, the key yield to diplomacy. There are a lot of ways to actively use it, right? Buddy up with an independent people, gradually incorporate them as a city-state. Maybe take them over, become a settlement of your own if you don't want to just disperse them militarily instead. Regardless, the spend options are really massive, and of course they lead to some nice benefits down the line. However, the big mistake, and my key learning actually, is that unlike, say, food, where you just want it to be automatically spent so that you can grow, new population, get new tiles, with influence, you might actually be better off to keep some in reserve at all times. Not just for the chance meetings to reveal the enemy capital, or ruin your relationship with them if you'd like to go to war, but as you move through, the options will continue to present themselves and they'll be more significant. Here, for example, I'm choosing to stop the enemy from denouncing me. Denouncing me is probably a step towards war, so here I'm directly using my influence yield to keep us friendly, keeping us, hopefully, away from war. Just one example. Save some influence. My next mistake, harder to control but important to understand, is about the ages, and specifically about the legacy points. Of course, each age will present objectives. In the final age, you'll need to do these to actually be able to win, unless you just win by time. But even if you do win by time, you need to complete the objectives across the 4 domains. There'll be different goals, obviously, for each age and each category. My mistake is probably trying to play too broad. I might say, I can't be bothered with culture, but I want to try and do at least some of the other 3. Often it can be a better idea, particularly if you're planning ahead towards a dominant and specialized focus, to actually narrow down to just 1, maybe 2 pathways. This will give you not just more points in those and allow you to build up inevitably more yield and promote your leader and blah, 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 but it will also actually just fundamentally give you better options. Better options to choose as you move through the ages, to spend your legacy points on. Unique benefits specific to that yield. Of course, there's also the Dark Age option, get nothing in it and then receive a even more unique Dark Age option, an all or nothing, maybe comeback play. But generally speaking, I'd recommend not trying to play them all, but rather focus on 1 or 2. As we move through the ages, urbanizing will become a more and more important part of the game. Building more buildings, of course, as you unlock more through the ages, and old ones will start to become just a little bit redundant, or at least nowhere near as effective as they used to be. Let's take the example of the observatory, the first scientific building in the second age, the age of exploration. Important to note, of course, there are generally a couple of buildings that can provide each yield. The university, another option slightly later in the age. Nonetheless, it's time to build my observatory. So, if I click into the city and have a look at the buildings, I can see a tile where I've built a library. It was a good spot for a scientific building. But now the maintenance is massively outdoing the benefit. That's because most buildings that aren't ageless lose their adjacency bonuses as you move through the ages. So it's just providing 2 science, and that's it. If I build over top of it, thanks to the tiles around it and the increased yield from the age-relevant building, the observatory, I'll get way more benefit from that now relatively small 2 gold and 2 happiness maintenance cost. Now I'm getting 10 science and an influence, as well as 2 production on this tile. Overbuilding is immensely powerful. It saves you space, it saves you ultimately on the maintenance cost by spreading it across more effective buildings. Here you can see by replacing the second building, this time with the Exploration Ages dungeon, I've boosted this tile even more. Now with 2 age-relevant buildings, with their adjacency bonuses intact, and add some specialists into the mix here, not only completing your goals, your milestones for the age, but also producing one hell of a tile. The upside to doing this, to specializing in on some and leaving the rest to be rural, is that you'll also obviously be able to get the rural improvements, the clay pits, the woodcutters. And they might be very important for lifting up happiness in a city that will become increasingly unhappy thanks to specialists. That was a fairly dense one. Let's move on to a lighter point and a fun one to finish, but also a strategically important one, I promise. 3 points on the controls. Firstly, you can crucially pan around and take a look at some beautiful buildings by holding down the Alt key on PC, clicking and dragging. Secondly, more usefully, if you press Enter and Shift at the same time, you'll be able to force the game on PC to end your turn. This could be really important if you, say, don't want to select a research option, or don't want to build something, or maybe advance the age progression, or just get past something that's a little bit broken or bugged. Shift Enter, force end turn. Finally, of course, don't forget to check into your options and take a look at the controls UI. There'll be some hotkeys. Again, they'll be platform specific, but on PC, for example, something like R to do a ranged attack, or H to heal. Customize them to your heart's content and try and make the most of them if you can. I forget to use them all of the time and default to one-handed play. I'm sorry, I can't help it. I'll try and be better. And what is also seemingly trying to be better, these cool events. I believe if you play with the historical pairing, Leader and Civ, you get slightly better looking UI around your events, more specific things as well in terms of story. A fun little final aesthetic addition for this extra section here at the end. And this video was all about learning something new, and it's always my goal to not waste your time either. So I'm not going to do it here in the outro, though if you do have some extra advice or tips, please leave them down below in the comments section. We can hive mind and learn from each other's mistakes down there as well. So thank you for being here, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.